Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for a very special conversation with writer, director, producer, and SCA alumnus Robert Zemeckis. We're going to talk about his new HBO Max feature film, The Witches. When we call on you to ask questions, just make sure that you're putting your questions in the Q&A box that is at the bottom of your Zoom bar, and we'll take questions. We'll invite you over to be a panelist momentarily so that we can see you. If you'd like to turn on your video, that would be great. If not, when we move you over, you can just turn on your microphone. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, Robert, you are welcome to turn on your video now.
And there, can you hear me? Is my microphone?
Yes, absolutely. Perfect.
Great. Good.
So thank you so much. I wanted to just jump in by mentioning that this is a really interesting group of writers, starting from Roald Dahl and then through Guillermo del Toro and then you and Kenya Barris. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the version of this film that originated with the Guillermo adaptation and sort of where you took it from there?
Yes, well, yeah, so Guillermo wrote, he wrote a version, he wrote a screenplay quite a few years ago. I think his intention was to do it as a stop motion animation movie. And that was the one that I read that, you know, the folks at Warner Brothers sent me that script. And I thought that, and the main contribution, the thing that he came up with was this idea of bookending the movie with the hero boy mouse narrating on both ends. And I thought that that was you know, that worked really, really well. And then, yeah, and so I took that screenplay and I just ran with it. And then, you know, worked with Kenya to, you know, kind of set the movie in the, you know, 1968 South, and you know, came up with a few cultural references there, but didn't want to make it over heavy, and you know, sort of, you know, we collaborated on it like that, and kind of let it all just kind of find itself.
So the adaptation and moving it to the 60s does open up a lot of really, I think, evocative material for your costume designer, your production designer, to really give it that beautiful, colorful look. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the conversations that you and Kenya had about what sorts of things would really work well for this story by placing it in the 60s?
Right. Well, yeah. So, yeah. Well, my original idea. Look, you know, the main reason I wanted to, the reason that I wanted to set the movie further back than when the book came out, which I believe was around 1983 or 1984, something like that, was because I didn't want there to be any closed circuit television surveillance or cell phones or modern security systems like they probably had in the 80s. Now, you know, the book doesn't reference that because we're, you know, we're in some, you know, some very old seaside hotel somewhere on the coast of England. But so I wanted to set it back then, but then Kenya said, well, we're going to set it back then. Let's set it back at, you know, this important cultural, you know, moment in history, which is 1968, 69, like in there. And I said, yeah, that works fine. That worked great. And so it kind of helped, you know, and then everything kind of fell together with, you know, like just sort of having a starting point there.
Thank you for having him stay a mouse. That was one adaptation component that Roald Dahl wasn't pleased with in the 1990 version of the film.
As a matter of fact, that was a contractual. That was a contractual non-starter for the Dahl estate.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so they said, we'll never, they said no one can ever, remake this film unless they abide by the original ending of the book, which I thought was great. I never thought that the good witch thing worked but that was obviously, I mean, from what I've read about the history of that I think they had the original ending on that version of the movie until they did their first preview. And of course, if you're not a Roald Dahl fan and you're not familiar with the book, that's a very strange ending for a children's movie. But that's Roald Dahl. So I loved it. I loved it because it was very subversive. So I thought it was the right way to go.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I'm curious what else they had to write, what you had to do.
That was it.
Oh, that was the one thing.
That was it. That was the only condition. That was the only one, and so, they had no problem with us setting the movie in the American South or any of the other changes that we did. That was their only condition. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the design, like coming up with how, I guess, there's it's been a long time since I've read the book, but they do actually wear masks in the book, right?
Yeah. Yep, they do wear masks, and again, that was something that I felt was sort of a shorthand for the book, because you can kind of, but when I didn't think it worked in the original, in the first version I mean, for Angelica Houston to have a mask that looks like live Angelica Houston, and then when she takes it off, it looks like she's like the Jim Henson, witch. To believe that, to take that leap, you have to believe that there's some witch magic that happened, right? Okay, so if you're gonna say, well, that was the best they could do with the tools they had in 1989 or whenever they made the movie. But so I thought, well, look, if they're witches and they can, and they've got all these other things that they can do, then we should try to, we can transform them using what we'll call digital prosthetics, and make it look more interesting, and use all our modern tools to do that. And then because the problem, whenever you put, so here's the irony, and this is what I didn't like about, I mean, I love a lot of the, Nick Rogue movie, but the irony of the Nick Rogue movie is when the witches take off a mask, the actress puts on a mask.
Right.
And I was thinking, okay, we got to figure out a better way to do that. That was just me from a writing, filmmaking standpoint.
So I was reading a little bit about some of the stuff that Anne Hathaway was doing, and sort of envisioning what her character was like, outside of the world of the film, and also developing this crazy accent. Was that something that came from her, or were you very specific on?
Well, where that came from is the book. I mean, it's really laid out very clear, the accent. I mean, but you really got to have an ear for it. I mean, the way Roald Dahl wrote it in the book, and Anne did, when Anne does lines like "Why is this wool here, I wonder?" That was written like that by Roald Dahl, right? I mean, he wrote it exactly like that. And so she, she took that and ran with that, and that was the place where we started. But we wanted it to be an accent. We talked about it. We said we shouldn't be able to place it anywhere. It should be some kind of Russian, Nordic witch accent. We didn't really quite know what it was, but it was inspired by the way that witch dialogue is written phonetically in the book itself.
I also heard that your costume designer wanted to not stay completely shackled to the 1960s, but sort of had free reign to do some things with the design of all of the other witches. Was there anything particularly, I guess, unusual about some of the background coven?
Yeah, well, so what Joanna and I, so again, we then said, okay, so we're going to be like in the late 1960s. So let's run with this. And we decided that so we started thinking of, what design would be something that would be, fun and be a bit menacing, and yet be stylish and kind of beautiful. And we coined this phrase, which that's how we decided that we were going to dress the witches. We call it Hitchcock glamour. So we were channeling all the costume design from the 1950s and 60s Alfred Hitchcock movies, and that's sort of what it grew. It grew from there.
How hard was it for you to find Jahzir Bruno? He's great in the film, but
yeah, he's great. Well, we found him. I mean, he had I think he'd done only one TV thing, and we found him in Atlanta, and he had done a couple student films actually down there, and he came in on a cold reading, and he just jumped off the screen. So there's real truth and method to that. Just going out on an audition and getting a lead in a big Hollywood movie. It happens. He was great. Yeah, he's great.
I know your films always have a lot of things that push the envelope in terms of its visual effects. Was there anything really unique in this film that was sort of a challenge to create?
I got it's interesting. The challenge from a mechanical standpoint is really not, there's so much horsepower in processors that everybody has in the devices that they walk around with all the time, that, the big challenge for all these years has been never having enough horsepower to create the images that look absolutely photoreal. And we're at that point now where we can do that. There's a lot of, I won't tell you what they are, but there's a lot of stuff that we do with Anne. That's where she's completely digital, and you can't even tell. Not a lot, a few things here and there. And so, but it's just understanding, how, the tools work, and sort of designing things to make them, serve the story. That's what I've always done my whole career. I always want the effects to serve the story. But if you surround yourself with a good, like I've got this great guy who's my, visual effects supervisor, Kevin Bailey, and then you get a really good effects house to deliver the stuff. I mean, you can pretty much do anything now.
I'm curious.
You're only limited by your imagination.
Were you able to, or did you choose to build a decent amount of your set, or was a lot of it enhanced with visual effects? Yeah,
well, like the ballroom, we built about 12 feet of it, and then it was all scene extension after that. Let's see what else. The exterior of the hotel was all digital. We just put a staircase, in a park somewhere. There was a lot of, anytime, look, I'm one of these guys who anytime I can stay on the stage, I want to stay on the stage. So, all the hotel balcony stuff, that was all digital. So there's a lot of digital scene extension stuff in the movie.
I'm curious, is there a difference when you're directing actors, whether they're sort of like professionals who've been in the business for a long time and are used to the sort of having to conceptualize of a space like that with only a part of it being built versus working with kids?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I mean, it used to be back in the day that actors, they freaked out when they were, put in a blue screen void, or they had to look at a piece of tape and imagine it's a creature. But nowadays everyone understands the language, so you don't hear that complaining like I used to back in the day. Everyone's pretty understand. Everyone, I always laughed about it because, there's nothing more unreal for an actor to do than their close-up. Because, they have this camera in front of them, this big piece of glass. They have to look at this piece of tape that's on a matte box. And, there's like, 15, crew members standing behind the camera with their bellies hanging out. And the person who they're doing this intense close-up moment with, that actor, is 20 feet away, doing the line. So, but they have no problem doing that, right? For 100 years, they had no problem doing that. But once we got into the digital world where we said, no, there's nothing going to be there. You got to pretend there's somebody there. Then they went, I don't know how to do that. But not anymore. I mean, not anymore. Most actors, know the medium that they're working in now.
I want to take questions from the audience in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask a little bit, since we were talking just briefly about the movie theater experience. Obviously, this film was intended for theaters and moved to a streaming service. I'm sure a lot of parents out there were thrilled that this was available in a safe environment, but filmmakers do love their films to be seen on the big screen. I'm curious to know how your feelings are about the fact that this premiered on streaming instead of in a theater.
Yeah, well, for me, it was a giant disappointment. This is what I would call COVID wreckage. But I understand it. And this is, I think this is something that was going to be inevitable, but COVID just accelerated it. I think you're going to see by the end of the year. I think you're going to see. Sadly, I think you're going to see a lot of theaters not survive, and you're going to see I guess we'll call it the distribution of movies being accelerated onto a streaming platform. But I don't know if that's, that somehow is going to have to change the language of the movie, because I've always made my movies like they're supposed to be, for me, it was always mass entertainment. And they were always designed to be viewed in a giant auditorium and have that experience with an audience. I never made a single movie that was supposed to be viewed in isolation. So I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I mean, I'll just continue to make movies the way I always did. But I don't know. I can only imagine that it's going to somehow change the face of what is perceived as the language of the cinema somehow. But I don't know what that'll be. But it'll have to somehow. I think it'll have to. Kind of like the way I think. In like if you go see Broadway musicals now, they have to continually start layering on a lot of digital stuff, and a lot of digital effects. Like they actually do digital scene extensions. Like if you saw any like that Harry Potter stage play. And we do a lot of digital scene extensions in the Back to the Future, the musical, that may or may not come out next summer. But but you can only go so far. You can't start recording performance and playing it back, if you know what I mean. Then it starts to become a movie. But that'll all start to shift too, I think. So anyway, that's what I think. That's what I think is how it's going to somehow change. But we'll see.
I'm curious if this, if the film was finished by March, or if you were still working on it, and if so, did that alter any way you may have done testing with an audience?
We never got a chance to test it with the audience. So I've never actually seen the movie, which sadly, I've never seen the movie play with an audience.
Oh, well,
so
we're going to correct that for you as soon as possible.
Yeah. Well, why did everybody see the movie in an auditorium?
Oh no, I meant as soon as we can, we'll throw it up in Norris.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, good luck with that. You know, that'll be. Yeah. Well, hopefully that'll be sometime before 12/22. You know, I mean 2022. But yeah, no, I never. So no, what happened was it was the good news and the bad news. I mean, the good news was I had wrapped all of my my live action work, and was and had just cut the movie, and then we were just finishing shots. So sort of the way we make these digital movies now, we had a crew in London, we had a crew in Vancouver, we had a crew in Marin, and we had a crew in Montreal. So it was really easy to move that into remote finishing, because we just had to find a time where everybody could be on the call, right? And so we would basically have to do that even if there was no COVID. So we were able to finish the movie the way we would have done it anyway. So that was the good news, that we didn't get dinged by COVID. But the bad news is that we were a movie that was going to be done and ready to be released at the worst possible time in theaters. So that's what happened. We also did the score remotely too, where we had to do the score in all these different pods. We had only the strings could be, in Abbey Road for 1 day. Then they had to leave, and then they had to disinfect the entire stage, and then the horns would come in. And so the whole thing was done. The whole score was put together virtually as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there anything, do you feel like anything was in any way compromised by that process? Because the score seemed like it was fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing was I didn't get to see the movie with an audience, and I didn't get to hear 100 players play the score live, which is one of the things I always love. So yeah, so it's kind of sad. I'm really kind of mourning the loss of what I've done my entire life. It's kind of sad. It's sad for me, but yeah, those were the fun things, seeing the movie finished with an audience in a like 600 or 700 seat theater. It's a great thing. It's the whole, for me, it was always the whole point of making films. So it was kind of sad not to be able to do that. It was also, I called all the members of my cast too, because I had to, we didn't get that moment where we can sort of like, just congratulate ourselves and say, look at that, sir. Yeah. So there was no marking of the finished movie. Let me put it that way, where we all were there to see an audience, and then we could all go out into the lobby afterwards and, smile at each other, so that's sad.
Well, I don't want to hog your time because
okay.
We have a lot of questions coming in from these students. So let me go ahead and start by, let's see, we'll welcome over Brando Benetton first. And as I mentioned to you guys before, I'm going to call on you and welcome you over to turn on your video. So Brando, I'm moving you now.
Here we go. Mr. Zemeckis, thank you for your time. Alex, thank you for organizing this. Mr. Zemeckis, I just had a question about your relationship with creativity and your passion for writing. You directed your first feature in '78, and that is just 5 years after graduating from USC, and so many of us have pressure to try and work and direct right away. So I wonder, in a way, how did finding success at such a young age, you were 26 at the time, how did that impact your creativity? And then I wonder, after decades of directing only, I started noticing that with Polar Express, you also returned to writing the screenplays for your movie more and more, especially we got Marwin a couple of years ago and now this. And I wonder if you could speak to that. Why did writing recently become more of a norm for you?
Yeah, well, I could answer that question first. Well, it's interesting, as you probably are aware, when you're directing a movie, you're even though you're not credited, I've always, you're writing the movie, but you're using different elements. You're not using words, you're using images, you're using a camera, you're using actors. So when you're directing, you're kind of writing anyway, and the writing never stops. So I just was lazy and didn't want to do the typing back in the day, I never wanted to, I was always collaborating and working really closely with the writers. But I just didn't want to, actually do any of the physical writing because I let them do the writing. So I didn't, so there was no, I didn't get credited for that. But then, then I don't know. I just started, when Polar Express came along, I thought, what, this could be a really hard movie to collaborate with someone on. I just kind of have to do this one myself. And so I did it, and I really kind of enjoyed it. And so I said, what, I don't know why I haven't been doing this for all these years. I might as well get back at it. So I switch off now, sometimes I write things, sometimes I don't. But I always felt that being a writer and I always said that, as a filmmaker, it's the unions that separate the writer and the director, because I always have my writers with me. I've never fired a writer, and I've always had them, when I say, well, we're making a movie, you're going to be with me, you're going to be here. You can't be off doing something else. What is it going to take? I need you here the whole time. So, I'm always collaborating, and I think that the writing, directing team, we should be called the filmmakers and not necessarily, separated, because we are telling the story together. As far as your first question, yeah, everything's a trade-off. It was wonderful and very heady stuff to be able to direct a movie at such a young age. But then then there's always a high price to pay, because you have to then you have to do the next one and the next one and the next one. And you got you're always like kind of like raising that bar. So it's like it's the best way I can describe it is that there's always a price and there's always a trade-off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alex.
Well, the biggest price I paid was I had no 20s. Let me put it that way. I didn't do normal things that a 21, a normal man in his 20s would do, because I was just working all the time. So that was a big price to pay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me go out to Ashwarya. Okay, moving you over now.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you so much for coming here. I actually interned at Image Movers this summer, so I'm glad it's
great. Good for you. Fantastic. Great.
I guess my question was, how have your projects shifted since COVID-19? And is there one specific project you're most looking forward to?
How have they shifted? Well, I'm not quite 100% sure. I don't know. I think where I am now is I've got to kind of, I've been saying to my team, we got this, we've got a project that we're working on at Disney that we're in this development on. And, I'm saying to everybody, if we can keep this one movie going, and we can make it with the COVID restrictions, we have to use this time to regroup and retrench and figure out what the landscape of the industry is going to look like. And and as I was as I was talking about earlier, kind of like looking around and seeing like what kind of movies we want to make, because they're going to be presented differently, and I don't know the answer, and I don't think anybody does. So, I don't know exactly what to say, but I do think we're going to have to sit back and watch and see what the landscape looks like.
Is there one you're very excited about? I'm just curious.
Say that again?
Is there a project that's like in the line that you're most excited to work on next?
Nothing that's really happening right now, but there's always a few. It's always a few. You never know which ones are going to become the reality.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Okay, we're going out to Ragini. Hey, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Mr. Zemeckis. Thank you so much for being here. Alex, thank you so much for organizing this. This film was absolutely stunning. It blew my mind how every single shot was just straight out of a children's book. Some specific things that stood out to me were like the color and the seamless use of animation to a point, like you mentioned, you could barely tell. I was wondering if you could kind of run through your thought process of approaching some of your favorite shots and how you went about integrating animation into the character's performance, specifically Hathaway's iconic Grand High Witch.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can, actually my favorite shot was the one that was one that I did in the camera, which was when, our hero boy, at the very beginning of the movie is upside down in the car accident and the snow is falling up, and then the camera rotates and we realize, oh, he's hanging from his seatbelt and the car's upside down. That's my favorite shot. And that only has some wire removal for his harness. All the snow and everything in that shot was practical. So it's interesting. My favorite shot is an in the camera shot. The animation, I was very fortunate because I had done a movie like this way back in the day called Who Framed Roger Rabbit with animation and live action. So I called on that, and I knew, kind of where the pitfalls were. And the thing that was different here, of course, is that we had these wonderful tools. We had digital animation, and we were able to, scan, all the sets. So I didn't even have to shoot the sets were as the sets that you would have to do if you were doing this back in the days where everything was optical. You'd have to shoot a background plate for every single animation thing that you were going to do. Now that can all be virtual. But yeah, that helped me out a lot. So I kind of knew where the I kind of already knew how to do this animation thing, but we also had the other tool of being able to put these head cams on the actors who were playing the mice, and we were able to digitally, record their performances when they were doing the off-camera lines. So that was also helpful too.
And if it's not too much to ask, was there anything from the get-go that you knew you wanted to do differently from the original film or the story?
The only difference was, I guess the big difference was, how I was going to present the witches, and eliminate them being hidden by these human face masks, and so that was, I think, that was the one thing from the get-go that I thought, we'll have to do differently.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're going to go out to Lorenzo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, it's great. Thank you for being here. It's great to meet you. So my question was, so right now I'm a grad student and I'm currently in 508. And so we start getting so much feedback from everybody. And I guess my question is, in your case, when you're working in such big films and you start getting feedback from the studio and from the producers and from the investors and from so many people, how do you stay true to your vision, and how do you find the balance and navigate getting so much feedback?
Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly how you do this because it is horrendous about we call it notes, you know, and some people are a lot more notey than others, right? So you're always going to, so listen, I'm glad that as a graduate student, you're getting all these notes because this is going to be your life for, if you stay in this business, no matter what form it is, or in this art form, you're going to get notes because what you've chosen to do is you've chosen to work in a very expensive art form. So you're going to get notes. So here's the only thing that I'm able to do to keep my sanity. And that is never take the note at face value because they're not the filmmaker. So you're seeing the whole film and they're reading a scene from the script. So don't take what the note is at face value. And the exercise that I put myself through is, because that'll just infuriate you when because you'll sit there and say, what script are they reading? Or you'll say, what film did they just see, right? But you got to back away from that. And then what I do is I say, okay, what are they really trying to say? What's the note under the note? They don't know how to articulate what they're bumping up against. And they're just writing this the best that they can, but it's very clumsy and clunky. So I can't react to that. But something is bothering them. And you got to go down and find what the note is under the note. And I find that to be the solution to all these notes because, you know, what'll happen is you'll get into a fight, you know, because somebody will say, why is he wearing that red tie? And you'll say, but wait a minute, why is that bothering them? It can't just be the red tie. Something else they got to be bumping up against something in there. You know, something isn't, you know. So that's what I do. And that's the best advice I can give you. But get ready for it because it's never going to end.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm bringing on Adam Cardman. Adam, whenever you're ready.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Mr. Zemeckis. I was in your mocap class way back in the day. I don't know if you remember me. That's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Alex already touched on this, but I had a question about the streaming release. As you know, a lot of other movies have postponed their theatrical releases in the hopes of releasing in the theaters down the line. I was wondering what drove the decision to release The Witches on streaming now, and also what drove the decision to release a movie exclusively on one platform rather than multiple platforms at once?
I have no idea. What has happened is, COVID has flipped the game board and the pieces are flying and nobody knows where they're going to land. And it's human nature to try to control things that you have no control over. So that's the best answer I can come up as to why, these decisions were made. They make no fiscal sense. They make no, artistic sense. But somebody must have reasons somewhere, but I have no idea what they are.
Okay. Are there plans to release the movie on Blu-ray or 4K disc?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know I don't know. Does streaming mean the movie just lives forever on whatever service produced it? And to find it, you have to subscribe to that? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think anybody does. And I don't think it's being done. I don't think it's being done by any kind of some kind of, diabolical plot. I just think nobody kind of knows what to do. I don't think anybody knows what to do. I mean, I think everybody was sort of blindsided and sucker punched by this, COVID. And, I don't think things can be that well thought out because I don't think people have enough information yet.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, we're going to go out to Samuel next. All right. You with us, Samuel?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks so much for being here. Just as someone who's had such a great career over such a long time, I'm curious what routines, rituals, habits you have that help you stay creative and productive.
Rituals, I get, I watch movies. I watch my go-to movies, the ones that, I love so much. I try to write. All the time. And, yeah, I don't, I wish I had more of a real ritual that I have, but I just try to stay as close as I can to the art form, in any way that I can, and get my steady diet of what's going on out there. And that's what I do.
Great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I'm welcoming over Mark. Mark, if you're out there. Mark, I'm seeing that you're on our side. Okay, yeah, there we go.
Sorry, I didn't hear me. Hey, Mr. Zemeckis, this is a real honor. You kind of touched on this earlier, but the question that I submitted was, how do you go about auditioning or just choosing the lead actor? And how did you evoke what I consider to be probably the saddest feeling or the saddest expression that I recall seeing in a movie in recent memory?
So when you say the saddest expression, you're talking about the ending of the movie? Is that what you're talking about?
The opening sequence when he had lost
the opening sequence. Well, I mean, that was just sort of an extension of what, happened in the original, in the actual book. And, I mean, and that's, it was brought to life by having such a great cast to be able to pull that off and understand how to do that. And, as far as your first question, it's just something that you kind of have to feel it, I guess. I get it said, if the expression that I always say to my casting director is, I don't know, that I need actors. I was looking for actors who are working behind their eyes. If that makes any sense. In other words, it's like there's a lot of actors who perform the line and then you can kind of see them switch off and, they're getting ready to do the next line or whatever. It's kind of like that. You just got to feel it. You got to feel it, and actors, I don't talk to actors about their technique ever. I just talk to actors like when I'm directing, I talk to them like I'm just sort of like a throttle, do it faster, do it funnier, do it sadder. And I don't care. I don't want to hear where you go to get that. That's your job. I don't want to be in therapy with you, just go, I just explain to them what I think the character should be feeling at this moment. I think that's all that actors really want, is they just want to know what they're feeling at this moment in the movie. And that's what the director is supposed to tell them. And if I can't answer that question, there's always a problem in the screenplay.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I hope, I think as more people and they get HBO Max on more platforms in the coming months or years, I think it's going to be discovered by a lot of audiences every Halloween, because we sure enjoyed it. My toddler was pretty scared.
That's cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right, we should have Lena with us.
Okay. Hi, 1 second. Let's figure. Hi. You here?
We can hear you.
Here. Okay. I don't know why the video isn't working. Maybe let me try. Oh, okay. I have some guests. Hey, Mr. Zemeckis.
Wow, nice.
Because they love the original Witches, so I was like, guys, we have to see this Q&A, and then we're gonna watch the movie. So my buddy here has the question. So you mentioned your go-to movies. Can you tell us your favorite movies?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that. I couldn't hear that.
Stand a little closer to the computer.
You mentioned your go-to movies. Can you tell us your favorite movies?
My favorite movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite movies are my favorite top 5. Well, not I don't know if I have all 5 of them, but yeah, my favorite movies are The Godfather, Dr. Strangelove, and It's a Wonderful Life. Those are my favorite movies.
Great options.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Bye. All right, let's move over to Anna, and then we'll maybe take 2 more after this, if that sounds good. Okay. Hello. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah, we can't hear you. Hey.
Okay, I am from Portugal. Right now I'm at the bed because this is almost 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm very happy to have this pleasure to talk with Mr. Zemeckis. I had the opportunity to be at LA. I was at USC student before. So my question is, how long it takes from the pre-production to till the end? How long it takes all together?
Well, it depends on the scope of the movie. I mean, I think the average time it takes to make a movie, an average movie with not that many visual effects, is about 18 months. But then, depends on the scope of the movie. I've made movies that took that shot for over 100 days, 110 days, and then I've made movies that I've made in 30 days, 40 days. Depends on the story. Depends on what you have to do, and then of course, we wrapped on The Witches. We wrapped principal photography around the 1st of June of last year, and we delivered the movie around the end of April of 2020. So that's how long it took to do all the animation on the mice and to put all the shots together, and so that was almost a year of post-production on The Witches.
Oh, thank you very much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Big hug from Portugal for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we should be able to go out to Kevin Stern next.
Mr. Zemeckis, sorry for the delay. I was just wondering, did you enjoy going back down to South Carolina to use some of the Forrest Gump locations for this movie? And coincidentally, I'm working with Kevin Bailey and your team right now on your next project. So
great.
Nice to hear the shout out for him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, it was great. It was fun. It was. We did a couple of quick shots there, yeah, I mean, you can't. There's that thing that there's a certain area in that Gothic South that you can't get anywhere else in the world, and that's what we were looking for, and so we were able to get there and get some of those shots at the perfect time. So it was good to get back there.
Cool. It was good seeing you again.
Good seeing you.
Okay, we have Dustin Jacobs. Hey.
Hi there.
Hello.
So it seems like Hollywood has been in sort of a rehash mode for the better part of 20 years. So my question to you, Mr. Zemeckis, is simply this. When are they going to come after some of the IPs that you made famous, or have they already tried?
They're always trying to make another Back to the Future, but that won't,
Sure.
we won't let them do that. Yeah, I don't know. It's not anybody's fault except the audiences.
Sure.
And so if the audiences would vote with their feet and go to see all original movies, we would be making only original movies. So there's nobody sitting around in the higher echelon in the Hollywood system of people who are saying, we're going to try to only make movies that have pre-sold titles. We're going to force it on the audience. They're only doing what the audience wants. They only react. They don't have ideas. They react to the marketplace. And in the last 20 years, the audience has only ever wanted to see sequels and pre-sold titles. When an original title would come out, no one would go. So they don't make them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin. So I just wanted to sneak in one or two of these questions that I'm reading through here, just because I think that they're pretty good ones. So, sorry, now I lost it. How do you balance writing a movie where children are the target demographic while still making it appealing to adults and a broader audience?
Right, that's a good question. That's a tricky one. I take, what I do is I start by making the movie for adults, because I don't think it ever works to talk down to children, because I think children get everything. And I think that they can smell it when you're talking down to them. So if I'm making a children's movie, and I've only ever made a G movie, which was The Polar Express, and this might be the only PG movie I've made. I think some of my early movies were rated PG, even though they're pretty much more like PG-13. So I just write it for adults. Now, I end up getting a lot of notes because of that. I get a lot of notes. Endless notes about how scary the witches are, or how, it's like endless. It's like, and you just gotta like putting pennies on a balance beam. You just gotta say, oh, okay, we'll cut it back a little bit. Okay, we'll go, and nobody really knows, because some kids, because it's always, some kids are afraid of the screen, when it's just white sitting there. They think it's a big eyeball looking at them. And some kids are afraid of nothing,
That's interesting. My childhood, there was very little supervision over what I was watching. So I was always really terrified by Return to Oz.
Right.
And still one of my favorite movies. I would have hated it had it been too watered down. Like, that stuff is terrifying, and that's sort of stays with you.
Yeah, my daughter, who's 13, still won't watch Dumbo. Not because she's afraid. She just hates that scene when they lock up Dumbo's mother. That's just horrifying to her. Everybody's different. My parents took me to see Psycho when I was a kid, so maybe that's why, I'm kind of scarred a little bit or something. But yeah, I just sort of write it, and then of course, but you can't win. You're always gonna, if we had a chance to preview this movie, which we didn't, I'm sure we would have gotten a lot of cards from, a lot of cards from parents who are saying that this movie's too scary for their kid. Because we've seen this in focus groups, where we'll see, we'll put parents and kids in a focus group, and the parents will have a problem, but the kids will say, I thought that was great. So, how do you know?
One last thing before we let you go. Someone was asking what books inspired you when you were a kid.
What books? You mean like children's books?
I would assume something that you just, that sparked your imagination, inspired you to be a storyteller, something that's from your childhood.
It's really interesting. I grew up in a very much a working class, working poor family, and we didn't have a lot of books. But the books that I did when I was a little kid, my favorite books were they used to make these. I guess they were the little golden books or something, but they were like they would do like these little mini versions of the Disney movies that I saw in the theater. They would do a version of Sleeping Beauty, or a version of, Lady and the Tramp, and all these things. And I guess, that was my young kid. I mean, but when, when I talk to all these people who, when they were kids, like, and they say, oh yeah, The Witches was my favorite book. I read that when I was 8 years old. That wasn't my experience, but mine was television. But that's just where I came from. So there you go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, especially right now when we all really needed a break from CNN. So hopefully at some point, we'll be able to provide you with 400 18-year-olds in Norris to celebrate this movie.
That'd be fun. Yeah, and I'm hoping that happens sooner than later. That'd be great. Very cool.
Take care, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.